Apologies. Sorry.
Apologies. Councillor Friel.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Councillor Cowan.
Here.
We have an apology this morning from Councillor Mackay. Councillor Barton.
Yeah, here.
Councillor Holland.
Here, thanks.
Councillor Lennox.
Morning, here, thanks.
Councillor Lennox. We have an apology this morning also from Councillor Crawford. Councillor Watts.
I'm here.
Thank you. We also have an apology from Councillor Filson this morning. Councillor Hogg.
I'm here, thank you.
And Councillor Stewart.
I'm here.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And as there is no hearing procedure this morning, we'll go straight to item 3, agenda item 3. Planning application number 22/0405.
Declarations, Chair.
Oh, apologies. Is there any declarations of interest? No. Okay. Thank you. So back to agenda item, and it's the development of a 49.9 megawatt battery energy storage facility and associated infrastructure at Clough Depot at the colliery of A70 West of Ochiltree by Brockwell Energy Limited, and that's on pages 5. Starts pages 5 to 45, and over to Graham. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Good morning, councillors. I'll keep this presentation brief as the committee report sets out the details of the case. This is a major application for a new battery energy storage system on land in the northeast corner of the existing Clough Depot, located just north of the A70. And you can see the application site on the slide there. And this slide is just the applicant's location plan, showing the red line site boundary where the cursor is there. And this is the application site in a bit more detail, where you can see the context of some of the surrounding features. And you can see the red line application site boundary, and the blue line just to the south and east of that represents land under the ownership of the applicant. This slide shows the site layout. There are 26 containers proposed, which will house the battery energy storage units, along with 13 transformer stations, 2 switchgear units and 1 control room. A site access and access track and hard standing are also proposed. There are 4 lighting columns proposed in the corners of the site, which will have lighting units and CCTV cameras attached to them. And a 4-metre high acoustic fence will be erected around the infrastructure to provide noise attenuation. And you can see the access to the site there is just on the northern boundary there with the road. Landscape planting is also proposed around some of the boundaries of site to provide a degree of screening of the proposed development. You can see that on the slide there. And this will also account for the loss of some of the trees along the northern boundary of the site, which will require to be removed to make way for the visibility display. And if I go back to the previous slide, you can see some of these trees on the northern boundary here. Those will be removed to make way for the visibility display, and there'll be some grassland planting there and also trees along the northern, eastern and southern boundaries. The following slides show some more of the proposed infrastructure in detail. So as the first one, we can see the control room and the transformer building there. So fairly standard sort of box modular unit. This is what the battery energy storage units will look like, housed in what are essentially shipping containers in terms of their appearance. These are the elevations of the 2 switchgear containers, which are also very similar to shipping containers. And these are the elevations which will effectively constitute a 4-metre high acoustic fence enclosing the main infrastructure. So really, that's about all you're going to see when you're looking at it from the north, south, east and west. The proposal will have a construction period of approximately 6 to 8 months and would be a permanent consent. Looking at some of the photographs of the application site now, this is a view just north of the A70, looking northwards towards the application site. Construction traffic would use this road to access the site, and you can see the existing electricity substation, which is just to the south of the proposed development. This is a view of the site from the west of the application site, looking eastwards towards the site. You can see the trees just in the corner of the picture there many of them will be removed to make way for the visibility display. And this slide shows the ground conditions of the site at present, which is largely compacted stone and gravel. You can see the existing kiln facility in the background of these photos, and that gives some of the context of the views within this area. The final slide just shows a view from the road of the northeastern corner of the site. The existing trees along the eastern part of the boundary here, they'll be retained. But some of the trees just to the north of the corner there, they'll be removed to make way for the visibility display. And of course, some of the trees in the east will be supplemented by further landscape planting. In terms of impacts, these would be relatively limited. Visual and landscape impacts would not be unacceptable. Views of the proposed development would be seen in the context of the wider Killick depot, which already influences the views in this area. It's a relatively small site, and views would predominantly be limited to the boundary acoustic fencing, and the landscape planting would help to screen some of the views of the development to a degree. Ecological impacts would be limited given the conditions of the site at present. It is unlikely to have any notable protected species presence. Nevertheless, conditions would be attached to any consent to ensure that protected species surveys are undertaken prior to any works on site. And if any species are found, appropriate mitigation can be detailed for the approval of the planning authority. Landscape planting might actually help improve the habitat on the site for wildlife in the long term. Conditions would be attached to secure details of drainage proposals, ensuring the development does not increase any runoff risk. In terms of traffic impacts, these would not be significant on the local road network, and there would be a peak period of approximately 4 weeks during the whole construction period where traffic volumes would be at their highest, although this would reduce for the other phases of the construction period. In terms of light good vehicles and contractor vehicles, during the peak period, which, as mentioned there, would be approximately 4 weeks, it's anticipated there'll be 40 two-way trips, which is 20 arrivals and 20 departures each day, and outside the peak construction period, this would reduce to approximately 10 two-way trips, or 5 arrivals and 5 departures per day. A construction traffic management plan would be secured by condition to control and manage construction traffic on the local road network. In terms of amenity impacts, visual impacts are relatively limited, with few properties within the immediate vicinity likely to experience clear views of the development. Views are likely to be limited to the perimeter acoustic fence, and as mentioned previously, the landscape planting will help to screen views of the development over time as it establishes. In terms of noise impacts, these will be capable of being mitigated through the erection of the acoustic fence around the proposed infrastructure. The Council's noise consultant is satisfied that it will be able to mitigate the noise from the proposed development. And the specific details of the acoustic fence will be submitted to the Council for its approval through conditions. One representation was received in objection to the development, though this relates more to concerns over any disruption to land associated with cable routes. However, cable route installation does not form part of this planning application. So to conclude, this is a relatively modest battery energy storage system proposed in the northeast corner of the existing Killick site. The site itself is not particularly sensitive, and the development would not cause any unacceptable impacts, with any impacts that are likely to arise being capable of being mitigated. No consultees have raised any objections, subject to conditions in some cases, and these can be addressed through the conditions attached to the report. There will be some limited employment opportunities, though this will most likely be during the relatively short construction phase, with only infrequent maintenance visits required after that. For the reasons set out in this report, it is recommended that the Planning Committee approve the application subject to the conditions set out in the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Excellent report, Graham. Any questions, members? Any points of clarification or conditions? All quite satisfied with what's in front of you? Yep. Anyone wish to put forward a motion? Agree the recommendations? Councillor Barton?
Yeah, I move we agree and along with recommendations.
And Councillor Friel supports that. Okay. That is. Anyone otherwise minded? Okay, thank you for that, and thank you for taking your time to go through the papers. Okay, members, we move on to item number 4, which is planning application number 22/0003/S36 VAR. And it's the application for variation under section 36C of the Electricity Act, variation of consent to vary the existing section 36 consent and deemed planning permission to operate the Gallowhistle Wind Farm, the life extension at Gallowhistle Wind Farm, and at C38 Glenbuck off A70 Glenbuck, East Ayrshire. And we begin on pages 46. And I believe that's Graham again. I think it's Graham all morning. Poor Graham, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Me again, everyone. This is a fairly straightforward case. The Council received a consultation request from the Scottish Government for an application made under Section 36C of the Electricity Act 1989 and the Electricity Generating Stations Applications for Variation of Consent Scotland Regulations 2013 for a proposed variation to the operational Gallowhistle Wind Farm to extend the operational lifetime of the wind farm by a further 10 years. Scottish ministers originally granted consent for Gallowhistle Wind Farm Section 36 application in August 2012, which was subsequently varied in May 2015 to vary the blade lengths of the turbines and increase the overall generating capacity of the wind farm to 66 megawatts, amongst other changes to ancillary infrastructure. The consented layout is shown in the slide on the screen and includes 22 turbines with a maximum blade tip height of 122 metres. The wind farm was subsequently constructed and became operational in March 2017. And the as-built layout, taking account of any micrositing, can be seen on this slide. It's not very clear, but the general infrastructure layout is similar to the consented one, with only limited differences as a result of the allowable micrositing. Should be noted that only 2 of the turbines are located in East Ayrshire, with the other 20 being located within neighbouring South Lanarkshire Council. And if you just look back to the first slide again, see really where the cursor is, 2 turbines there in our area, plus the access track off the A70. The current wind farm has an operational lifetime of 25 years, and the applicant is seeking, through the variation application, to extend the operational lifetime by a further 10 years. There are no other changes proposed as part of this application. Given the wind farm has been operational for a number of years now, it forms part of the baseline, and the impacts associated with it have been found to be acceptable by Scottish ministers through their consent of the wind farm. As set out in the report, the proposed variation will not introduce any new significant effects or cause any existing effects to be intensified such that they would become significant. In all respects, the wind farm would continue to operate as it currently does, but for an additional 10 years beyond the original anticipated 25-year operational lifetime. No consultees have raised any objections to the proposed variation in their response to Scottish ministers, nor have any of the Council's limited internal consultees raised any objections. In terms of financial implications, the same financial guarantee reviews which have taken place for the wind farm so far would continue to take place for the duration of any extended operational period. The Section 75 legal agreement currently in force for the existing development would be amended by a variation to ensure the same obligations set out in the legal agreement apply to the varied consent, and the applicant has agreed to varying the legal agreement accordingly. So to conclude, it is considered the proposed variation, as it is only limited to extending the operational lifetime of the existing wind farm by a further 10 years, with no physical alterations or changes to the wind farm as it currently exists, would not result in any unacceptable impacts. Set out in the committee report, it is recommended that the Council raises no objection to the proposed variation, subject to the conclusion of a amount of variation of the Section 75 legal agreement for the existing consent prior to the issue of the Section 36C consent and deemed planning permission by the Scottish Government, or agreement to the satisfaction of the Planning Authority of another arrangement to secure a legal obligation to include those matters listed within the legal implications section of the committee report, and the attachment to the deemed planning permission of the same planning conditions as the Section 36 consent, subject to any amendments to reflect the proposed variation and the fact that the development is operational. The detail of these conditions is to be agreed by the Planning Authority in discussion with the Scottish Government and the applicant. Thank you.
Again, thank you, Graham. Excellent report. So over to members for any questions or clarification, and to remind you that we also have roads with us as well as legal and the planning officers. Is
Councillor Lennox.
can't see from here, thank you. Councillor Lennox.
Morning, Chair, thanks. I'm happy to move that we approve the extension of this application, thanks.
Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Linda. Okay.
Otherwise minded.
Anyone otherwise minded? Not quite straightforward. So that's the recommendations on page 46. Thank you. Just going to move straight back on to Graham. He gets a chance for a wee sip of water there. You ready, Graham?
Yeah.
Okay. Hold on. I have to announce. Sorry about this. Okay, it's agenda item number 5, and it's similar. Planning application number 21/0006/S36 farm, and its submission for approval in relation to condition number 11. That's decommissioning and restoration strategy of planning consent number 19/0001/S36 farm at Pinclow Wind Farm, and that's south of Newcomnock. And over to you, Graham. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. No slides for this one, everyone. This is an application for the approval of matters specified in conditions relating to condition 11, part 2 of deemed planning consent 19/0006/S36 VAR, which was for the Penclow Section 36 variation wind farm, located at Penclow Farm to the south of Newcomnock off the Afton Road. Under the Council Scheme of Delegation, committee approval is required by a condition imposed on a grant of planning permission to address conditions relative to restoration and aftercare of sites. Condition 11 Part 2 requires the submission of an outline decommissioning and restoration strategy for the written approval of the Planning Authority. The condition itself sets out the various matters and details to be included in the decommissioning and restoration strategy. After various revisions to address comments from the Council's consultants, Ironside Farah Limited, and the Planning Authority itself, the final version of the decommissioning and restoration strategy was submitted on the 14th of March 2023. The decommissioning and restoration strategy sets out the various actions to be undertaken to decommission the development and restore the site. Outline proposals include the removal of turbines and their foundations to a depth of 1 metre, removal of control buildings and associated compounds, breaking up of tracks and hard standings and soiling these over and seeding them to ensure that vegetation establishes. There may be some retention of sections of tracks for use by the landowner, which is Forestry Land Scotland, for operational forestry purposes, but this will be based on the agreement of the Planning Authority if evidenced to be justified. An Environmental Clerk of Works and Planning Monitoring Officer will be employed throughout the decommissioning and restoration and aftercare periods to ensure works are done correctly and in line with the relevant environmental provisions. Fully detailed surveys and management plans, such as a pollution prevention plan and waste management plan, amongst others, will be submitted for the Planning Authority's approval as part of the detailed decommissioning and restoration plan. 5 years of aftercare works will take place, including peatland habitat improvements. The decommissioning and restoration is anticipated to take approximately 12 months, though this period may reduce depending on the extent to which any elements on site will be retained. The decommissioning and restoration strategy will be reviewed every 5 years to coincide with the financial guarantee review periods, and this will inform the assessment of costs required for the subsequent financial guarantee. A final detailed decommissioning and restoration plan, which will be informed by the outlined decommissioning and restoration strategy, will be submitted for the approval of the Planning Authority at the relevant time in accordance with Condition 11 Part 3 of the consent. But Condition 11 Part 2 of the deemed planning consent requires a decommissioning and restoration strategy which addresses the matters set out in the condition. Having reviewed the submitted strategy and for the reasons set out in the report, it is recommended that the application be approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. Over to members. Anybody, any questions? Anybody wish to move the recommendations? Councillor Friel. Okay, thank you, Councillor Friel. Do we have a seconder to approve the recommendations? Councillor Watts, thank you. There's about 3 of you there. There was a hand. There was the fastest hand. Okay, thank you. So that's recommendation on page 83, and we're on to our last piece now. Okay, agenda item number 6. You may have noticed it's slightly different this morning. Before we go over to Graham, this is the planning application number 22.
Barry, Chair.
Barry, I beg your pardon, Barry. Graham, you do get a break. Barry's hiding at the end there. It's planning application number 22/0190/AMCPP, and it's the application for approval of matters specified in condition of planning permission for partial discharge of condition 6, which is restoration and aftercare plan phases 1 and 2 of planning permission 20/0496/PP at land adjacent townhead of Greenock, B743 from U724 Garpell to Greenock Water, and that's Muirkirk, East Ayrshire, and it begins on page 92. Thank you, Barry.
Thanks, Chair. This should be quite a short one as well, I think. This report presents for determination application to partially discharge condition 6 of the planning permission, which is for an extension to Garpell Quarry near Muirkirk. I do have some slides, just a couple, just to show you where it is and so on, if I can get this to work. PowerPoint. Don't know why that's not showing the full slide, but yeah, there we go now. So that's the application site here. This is extension to Garpell Quarry. You can see it's just to the west of Muirkirk. The extension to the quarry is relatively small, as you can see. So this is the extension here, and this is existing operational quarry. And the extension forms extensions to phases 1, 2 and 3 of the existing quarry. Condition 6 requires the submission of a restoration plan and 5-year aftercare plan to be submitted prior to the commencement of operations within each phase. The full requirements of Condition 6 are set out in paragraph 6 of the report. The applicant has submitted a restoration and aftercare proposals for phases 1 and 2, and proposals for phase 3 would require to be submitted prior to the commencement of that particular phase. The restoration proposals would take place in a phased manner in alignment with the restoration of the existing quarry. So you can see here the existing quarry in this area, and the extension is here. So phase 1 is this part that I'm circling. Hopefully you can see that okay. And phase 2 is here. So it's just very small extensions to these areas. It's proposed that the landform would tie in with the surrounding landform and the restored ground being seeded appropriately. So you can see the contours that are proposed here, which are leading down to a ditch, which would lead to a pond at the bottom of the site. The restoration proposals are still fairly high level, as the quarry progress plans, which would require to be submitted on an annual basis, will set out more detailed proposals for the working and restoration of the quarry for the year ahead. And these are informed by the technical working group and the ecological clerk of works, and also agreed at compliance meetings which are held annually. The restoration proposals are considered to be acceptable for the purposes of partially discharging Condition 6 in respect of phases 1 and 2, as noted in paragraph 10. Ironside Farrar, who are the Council's compliance monitoring consultants, have provided input and are content with the proposals. It is therefore recommended that the committee discharge Condition 6 in respect of phases 1 and 2 of the extended quarry. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So that's the recommendation on page 92. It is recommended the Planning Committee approve the application for the partial discharge of Condition 6 of planning permission. Any questions, clarifications? Any proposals?
I'll move it.
Thanks, Councillor Stewart. And I think that was No, I missed. A hand went up and went down. Councillor Friel, thank you. Sorry, Willie, hand went up. Honestly, it's like it's the fastest draw of the hands this morning, it really is. And you also have the blind chair here who can't catch everything. So thank you, everyone. that's that concluded our committee today. And just before we stop recording, just remind you that we're going to have a quick training session if you'd like to stay on. Thank you.